when you first met Larry Hoover.
Exactly.
And now for me, even being a young white guy, I was in the streets. Jeff Fort, Larry Hoover, Willie Lloyd, these guys were like gods to the young street people.
Hello.
We looked up to them, and that's what I wanted to be.
OG, two letters that define respect. I created the Original OGs to document the forgotten parts of American history. I want to recognize and give a voice to the men and women that have climbed to the top of their game. The men and women this marquee have been authenticated as original OGs. Welcome to my world, a world of the originals, the unique. Welcome to the Original OGs. Welcome to the Original OGs, and I'm your host, OG Mr. Rick. Before we start, I want to say to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like and share. And to all my people that was out there at the Bud Billington Parade and showed so much love, I want to say thank you. I have a piece of paper here. I don't use this much, but today the story is so interesting, I don't want to miss anything. My guest today is Scott Anthony, an entrepreneur, lifelong fighter.
The best tobacco in the world. A ver, ¿nos explicas de esos tabacos?
And a former Cuban cigar smuggler who made more than 50 trips to Havana getting cigars, moving millions in product and building a global underground network. He's been haunted by the FBI, the DEA, the U.S. Marshals, and Interpol. Built criminal enterprises in Chicago and Havana. Lived years as a fugitive and later reinvented himself. Redemption, that's the most important part. In as a fugitive, later he went to Mexico managing world-class fighters and rubbing shoulders with champions. Is an author of Smoke. Smoke is a confession of Cuban cigar smugglers, with 3 more books already on the way. This man has already lived 10 lives in one. Yeah, now, where were you born?
I was born at Mother Cabrini Hospital in the city of Chicago.
Wow.
1964.
Wouldn't
Long
believe that.
time ago.
Wouldn't believe that. You know, earlier years I didn't hit on something. I know, how did the streets come about in your life?
Probably the same as it does for most people. My father left when I was 4 years old, and you know, Rick, it's funny. I had this conversation with my wife just a couple months ago. We were sitting there talking, and I realized my life would have been different. My grandfather died when I was 7. He was the only male figure I had in my life after my father left us. My father came around a little bit until I was 10, and then at 10 he was permanently gone. He came around a little bit. That means twice a year, once a year.
Okay, holiday.
That's it. And brief. Okay, so yeah, I disinterested. And my grandfather died when I was 7. Then my grandmother, who lived with us, died at 8. My mother had to go out and make, what did you make it in the late 60s working? You made $1 an hour or $2 an hour maybe. So when my grandfather left, it hit me. That's when I lost hope. So I went to the streets to find the male figure. I get very, very intense when I'm talking and excited, especially the old days. It brings back these feelings.
I get it.
And it was the older guys who I looked at. You and I were chatting about that a few moments ago when you first met Larry Hoover.
Exactly.
And now for me, even being a young white guy, I was in the streets. Jeff Fort, Larry Hoover, Willie Lloyd, these guys were like gods to the young street people.
Hello.
We looked up to them, and that's what I wanted to be.
We get there. Mm-hmm. Earlier years,
I wanted to be a
wanted
gangster.
to be one of them.
That's it. I wanted to be a gangster. So at that level down at the bottom, you don't see these other people as role models because it's kind of out of our reach.
Yeah.
So our reach are the street heroes.
And they were prominent amongst us.
They were on the TV.
Yeah, now I didn't hit on something. Once you began to do that, how did you structure yourself in the streets? You had this conversation and relationship with Willie Lloyd. Mm-hmm. Did you ever encounter Mr. Hoover or Mr. Ford?
I didn't. I didn't. I know a lot about them because they were icons and we aspired to be them. And because I was in the bad kids circuit, it was all thugs. There were no good boys in there.
Right. So you were speaking about something. I had two questions on my mind. The Simon City Royals.
Yes, SCR, Simon City Royals.
And where were they in Chicago?
The Simon City Royals were a north side of Chicago gang. The motherland was probably Drake and Wolfram. They were the first branch, and then it's near Paulina and Cornelia, north side, and also there was the Roosevelt High School area. And again, gangs started because of neighborhood, because of the people you were around. You didn't have stuff to do. It also they started out more as a club than a gang.
Thank you.
Because just for activity, people to do. And then before long, you got colors. The high schools had a sweater, Letterman sweaters. They were healthy and all good intentions.
In the beginning.
In the beginning. And then the gangs, we took it to the next level and we put chops on it and colors, and many people got killed over those sweaters. And I don't know, just like the Vikings that raided and hit the beaches, we decided it was a conquest to take somebody's sweater away. So you're walking down the street wearing your sweater and a car drives by, they're gonna get out and thump you and take your sweater. Simon City Royals first, so it started, you had Simon City from a park. The park was Simon City, and then you had the Royals. And they ended up, the two leaders fought heads up. We used to call it heads up, one-on-one. Right. And one of them won, and they joined the gangs together. There was a little fight over what it was gonna be, and it ended up Simon City Royals. And it was a pretty big gang, and it got organized. They were prison strong, and I had a couple people I looked up to. So I had one guy, I'm gonna mention him. I saw him yesterday. He's 66 years old now, Duster. Duster was one of the older Simon City Royals from a branch, and I hung out with him. I was 9 years old, wanted to be like him and these other guys. So I started Touhy and Ridge Simon City Royals, which turned into the Farwell and Clark Simon City Royals. And we were united and joined under one umbrella with the Southport and Fullerton Simon City Royals, Central Park and Wilson Simon City Royals. And then after my era, the Simon City Royals turned into we had a few black guys, like I had mentioned. We had a few Hispanic, but then it turned into really mixed. So right now, there's a lot of black Simon City Royals, and they are all over the country.
Where did that fight take place at?
That fight would have taken place somewhere in that area around Paulina and Cornelia on the street. It was before my time. So these guys are a little bit older than me. And a heads up fight, and they're still friends afterwards.
I totally get it.
That happened a lot in our day.
It did.
Two guys would say, hey, let's go at it, and nobody killed each other, and there was no lifelong vendetta.
Yeah, at that period, then, things began to change as the guys began to enter the prison system. So when that started to happen, from there you just explained until what I just said. What was the relationship like with the Disciples and the Stones and the...
What happened is Okay, first, the Royals had gotten very big and very strong.
You ain't lying.
Very big, and they were united with the Popes. So it was the Popes and the Royals, and since they were strong, we were a force to be reckoned with. This group formed. It was the UFO, the United Five organization.
Okay.
So 5 gangs. I don't remember all of them. It was the C-Notes, the Gaylords, the Unknowns. A couple of them. They formed together. 5 gangs to fight and destroy us and dominate us, and they didn't do very well. They got beaten, and then there started to be more problems. The Royals started having problems with the Deuces, the insane Deuces from the projects. So what ended up happening is the prisons were a rough place, and that's where the Satan's disciples came.
Okay, so during that period and everybody's transitioning and they're going to prison and it's kind of one-sided in there, during that period, So guys decided to unite with different groups.
Well, I think it's a little deeper than that, Rick.
Yeah.
It's survival.
First.
And Satan's disciples, I'm going to guess, were mostly Hispanic. Now, I was getting out of the gangs at that time. A lot of guys know that watching this will know Whacker. His name was Patrick Daring. He was a figure in the prisons, and he was with King Augie of the Satan's disciples, and they were at Pontiac together. And Whacker would have been one of his right-hand man, and he was an enforcer. And Whacker sent me. He's like, "Hey, little brother, you're not gonna be able to do it alone with the Royals anymore. You get locked up. You throw this up, and here is the poem. We are stronger together. We are stronger together. We are as one. King David said it must be done. King David put the stars in the sky, and together we shine." And he sent me this poem, and I remembered it because it's survival. You go in prison, you've got to be able to survive. And right at that point, Rick, is when I made this transition, and I'm going to tell you why, and this is significant for the young guys out there. I went to somebody's house in the suburbs. My mother moved to Evanston. It's a suburb, but it's connected to Chicago. It's the same thing. And the gang started there. So you had the black GDs over there, and it got pretty rough. The brothers were rough at Church and Dodge and Evanston. Okay, so what happened at, I'm going to guess, right around 7. I was on my way to school, walking to school. But back then, you walked to school all by yourself, and I had to walk down this alley. And that's where all the guys hung out. We're talking grammar school kids, maybe a couple high school guys with them, drinking, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, and up to no good. And one of the older guys grabbed me. And back then, it was a greaser style. So he was dressed in a biker leather and a white T-shirt and blue jeans cuffed at the bottom with combat boots. And he didn't let me go to school. And he forced me to go do a burglary.
Wow.
And I had to do the burglary alone. He stayed outside. And he was waiting for me to bring the loot to the window. And when I went into the house, the maid was there, and she was sleeping. Her name was Liza. I still remember because I came running out. I said, "There's somebody there.
in there."
And he said, "She's sleeping. Don't worry." And he was right. So this lady's in there sleeping. I come running down the basement to the window where he's waiting, and I start climbing out. And he said, "No, wait a minute. Where are you going?" I said, "There's someone up there." He said, "She's sleeping. Don't worry. Go." And I walked back, I tippy-toed past the couch, she was sleeping. I went up, and he had already directed me. Go to the jewelry box, go to the silver, go to the dining room and get the silver. And I packed it all in. It's the first time I learned when you're doing a burglary, pillowcases.
Right.
That's the easiest, to
take
stuff
the
your stuff in
pillowcase
there and fill it up. And I would bring it back to him, and finally we left. And that was the first time. And it's like anything in life. It's like that in sex, it's crime, in substance. You keep raising the bar, and once that inhibition has been passed, then you're okay with the next one and the next one. So I started doing burglaries, and the older guys, I started hanging around with them. By the time I was 9 years old, I think I had my first tattoo at 9 in a hallway.
Wow.
Back then, you used a needle with a thread around it,
wrapped around
this
it.
little bottle that was called Indian ink, and you would draw it out with a pen and ping, 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 and the older guys had them, but back then, tattoos were not like they are today.
No.
They were a sign for the police that you were up to no good. You were a scumbag, you were a street person. 2 people had tattoos, sailors and people in prison. And so I hit the streets then, and I hit it running. And this is the funny thing. There was a level of innocence still, because we were all young, broken
Right.
families, blue collar life. Both grew up without a father in the home, and we needed it. So I hit the streets running, and I looked up to the older guys because they were all I had to look up to.
Father figure.
They were father figures, but they were lost too.
Hello.
So I'm following this guy who's doing stick-ups and playing with dope and up to no good.
Yeah.
And he's the guy I'm looking up to. And my mother lost me then. She told me she lost me at about 8 years old. And so 10 years old, I was fully in the streets. I started a branch of the Simon City Royals at 10 years old.
Wow.
But I was fortunate that I could see things other people couldn't see, so I started organizing. I started charging dues. Everybody had to pay $2 a week. I had a warlord who would keep the weapons and organize. I was the president of our branch, and back then, for the people who grew up back then, we wore sweaters. A little bit before my time, it was a jacket and a shirt. I had the shirt, I had the sweater, and we hung out on a corner, and we were up to absolutely no good.
Pretty much.
That's it. We just looked to get ourselves in trouble because we didn't have anything else positive. And I was trying to fit in, and you don't fit in when you're from the streets, and you feel it. I felt like a lump of lead. And I went to this house. I was maybe 13 or 14, and there were these 2 young girls, 8, 9 years old. They invited me in to wait for their brother to come home. I really wanted to see their older sister, but I went there under the guise of the brother. And they showed me that moment that I was an idiot. I was belligerent, I was uneducated, and the lucky thing is, Rick, they were so young and innocent, they didn't know. They didn't notice. I felt like I was naked in the room. They knew I knew nothing about the world. And these 2 little kids, I left there that day and I said, I don't want to be an idiot. I am going to go to school and learn, stay in school, educate, read, learn about the world, the continents, the countries, language. My kids speak 3 languages. I speak 2 languages because I don't want to be a dummy, because then you're invisible. I mentioned to you earlier the black, now you know, some guys might throw some stuff at me over this because, you know, the truth hurts. But the black gangs were the only organized ones.
Right. They call themselves organizations.
They organized. They look what the El Rukins did and the reach they had, and there might have been some white guys in some groups. Later, I created a crew from the street, but we weren't a gang anymore. This was a tight, private crew. If you've seen the movie The Town, that's what we became a crew. But prior to that, when you're a gang, you ended up in jail. You were outnumbered. The blacks ran the jail and they ran everything, and the whites had to look for cover.
Right.
Because they were exposed and all alone. And I believe that the black leaders really said, well, we're going to pull them in with us because we're going to organize more. We're going to get organized, and we're going to avoid the fighting, the violence, which only causes problems inside of the prison. And they were selling dope and running the show in jail. And it's a funny thing, man. These guys really ran a tight ship.
Oh, for real.
They called the shots, and they didn't let people act the fool. I don't know if it's still like that. None of that.
No, it's not like that now, but there was order.
There was order.
You know, my experience and my memory, these different groups began to understand each other's value outside the prison.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the conversation became money.
It all turned to money. All of it.
They started doing business together. Well, hey, you know, I got this going on out there. You know what I'm saying? You got a crew of so-and-so. We could do this, and all of that exploded. They became tighter.
Very. But the white guys had to do it out of necessity to survive. And I myself, I was nervous a few times when I was, like, I've heard stories, California prisons, you are forced to separate by race.
Don't work like that.
Not in California. Here it's okay. There's a line, but the line can be crossed. You can still talk and sit down and eat. But most people say, you're going to house with another black person, you're going to house with another white person. There is a separation, but it's not violently enforced.
It was like that in the old days. Stones tried to put themselves with stones. Disciples put them.
It makes sense.
They had whole unit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It wasn't nothing but disciples in here, vice lords in here. You know, it went like that. But there was also white nationalists.
Yeah, there's still that. That's even stronger today in the Fed.
Strong as hell.
Texas, California, Oklahoma, the Fed. See, Chicago's a whole different world.
It's a game of its own.
My friend Whacker, Patrick Daring, who went at the end of his criminal career, he got caught with a felon with a firearm. They gave him 20 years and he went to the Fed. He was in shock.
He was 20 years.
But after being in Illinois prisons his whole life, it's a whole different game. And now he's in the Fed. And you've got the American Indian groups, those are the chiefs. Then you got the Asian group. You have the Caribbean, the Puerto Ricans, the Cubans, the Dominicans, they're together. Then you have, he said, you got so many gangs we never even heard of.
And nobody's playing games.
Nobody's playing games. There's a lot of violence.
Okay.
Especially in the penitentiary, which is maximum security. It's called, you know, they have the grades. So when you go to penitentiary level, maximum security, violence all day long.
It's a whole nother game.
It's a whole nother game.
I went through one. Well, probably the worst one I ever went through was Oklahoma.
I went through El Reno too.
El Reno ain't no fucking joke.
Yep. People don't get it.
Hey, man.
El Reno, I went through Atlanta Federal Prison, the penitentiary. That place is intense. And both Atlanta and El Reno have the Cubans. So you got that whole group of Cuban refugees. Most of them are mentally ill. Hey, rough place.
Those that can think, they run shit.
Yep. I know what I'm talking about because I lived it and I was there. There was one white gang in my period, a little bit before me, the TJOs. They were known as the Thorndale Jagoffs.
Okay.
They were, I'm going to say, almost organized. Street gangs weren't really organized, but anybody who was really out there, the black gangs, they were organized.
I get
it. They had a hierarchy, they had control, and it's amazing that right now these guys can't get it together with each other on the street to form like the Warriors movie, the dream that Cyrus had. The numbers that are out there, if it was truly organized, it's like a union.
It is a union.
It could be. You had first Black Pea Stone Rangers.
Right.
And they were organized. And they had a hierarchy. And then you had the El Rukins and then the Black Gangster Disciples and all that stuff that formed. They were as close as you got to being organized crime.
Right.
Because the rest of the other gangs at my time, it was just a bunch of young people that had nothing to do.
What year did you start organizing guys together?
I started organizing where I really started, I was 10, so that was 1974. And then I kept growing. And then we moved, we had a really big neighborhood. I had that corner, we had a big neighborhood, and I moved to another park, then I moved to another place, and everywhere we went, we ruined it.
I get it.
We sprayed on the walls.
I get it.
We stole everything, and we made the good people move out and not want to be around us. And then I moved us, Simon City Royals, I moved us to Farwell and Clark. They opened a game room on that corner. It was a worse neighborhood than where we were that's an attraction. We grew in numbers. So we went, I'm going to say we were 20 to 25 strong when we were at Touhy and Ridge. And we moved over to Farwell and Clark. We probably grew to 50 strong. And now we had a few more black guys, a few more Hispanic people, and that's it. And we formed together, and we formed out of the first reason street gangs form is because there's nothing else for you to do. And then the lines are drawn by neighborhoods. You're in there with the people that you grew up with. And we had two guys that moved in from bad neighborhoods, both of them kind of from uptown. That uptown area in the 60s and 70s was a war zone. It actually looked like a war zone.
I totally get it.
So they moved in and they raised the bar for us as far as street activity and violence. And we just fell in line, and we got worse with the worst people.
The hierarchy of the situation. You had your little gang, other guys had their little gang. Who's over the top of that you guys would pretty much?
There were just older guys. The leaders of the Simon City Royals when I started was Touhy, Bimbo. Arab had already been killed. Touhy and Bimbo, they were down. They both got killed. They both got killed in cold blood in the street. And then their Frenchie was one of the guys I looked up to, and he was a prison figure. He was well known. He did time at every prison. He had a hard time when he ended up at Pontiac because, here's a story. In somewhere towards the late 70s, the folks created themselves, and then the people. And so you had these big groups organizing, and the theory behind it was pretty good. And in prison, they ran it pretty good. You were not allowed to bring problems from the street into prison. There's enough chaos in prison to begin with.
Right.
And the white gangs were all fighting with each other. The black gangs were too. We can never, no one can get along. Humans, since the Viking days.
I get it.
And the white guys, they really, somebody might dispute this, but they had no choice but to join up because they were outnumbered and outclassed in prison.
I get it.
And the leaders knew that we don't need race problems in jail. We already got enough problems. And so they created the folks and the people. And so the white gangs, Hispanic gangs, and the black gangs were all grouped together because prior to that, there's an infamous figure that was from my neighborhood, Joe Ganzi. He ran the TJOs, and then he ended up in prison forever, and he created at Menard the North Siders, and it was basically, but they were created to protect the white guys from the blacks because they were way outnumbered and fight. I'm going to tell you this. I'll duck my head and walk away. I'm not fighting anybody over their beliefs, the color of their skin, and their religion and all that stuff. I'm not fighting with anybody over that.
I get it. I grew up with them every day.
I can't even claim to have a bad life compared to these other people. You've got no shot at life. If there are no strong male figures in a boy's life, he's going to the street and we're getting used. The older guys are using us because they know we look up to them. Now, Jeff Fort, I know there's a movement right now to get Larry Hoover out, and God bless him, maybe it works. He's been in there a long time.
I think so.
And I bet money on it. If he gets out, he's not going to get in trouble anymore.
I guarantee you he's not.
So I would bet money on that.
I'd bet the farm on it.
And these guys were legends. They were pretty amazing.
He's in a position now. First of all, what he wants to do is enjoy his family.
How old is he?
I think Larry's 74.
He's not throwing up any gang signs on any corner.
This is a grown man. This is a grown man.
He's past the grown man stage.
You understand? This guy got grandkids he's trying to raise.
I believe he'll get out. I believe there will be an agreement and they will let him out. I hope so for him.
We're asking that they let him out. Here on the original OGs,
Okay.
I know the family,
Okay.
but no, I'm not involved in any of. What I do is try to support the thought of letting him out.
And so the smart guys knew that too. They knew it, and they tried to avoid that. And so the North Siders kind of dismantled, and then the folks and people took over, and that was a thing for a little while. But they went to war with each other too.
What was your first battle that you seen with these different guys?
Well, what we had territory. It's territory and it's culture. So we were the Simon City Royals / Popes / Howard Street Greasers / remnants of the TJOs, and there was 2 neighborhoods close to us that were becoming Hispanic, and so we fought. Our rivals were the Latin Kings on Howard Street on the near north side, so border with Evanston, and then Senn High School where the TJOs were, Thorndale and some other street right there. Someone reminded me after, yeah, we fought with them all the time. And the reason I didn't mention it, because with them we had a lot of shootouts. And there were people that got shot and killed, and nobody was ever charged on that stuff. So I didn't talk about it on that last video, but hey, I didn't do it. I wasn't a suspect. And all the guys that were involved, the ones who got shot and did the shooting, they're all dead.
I get it.
And so we fought with them all the time. Rick, when I look back and I think about it, it was useless.
It's always useless.
It was over nothing. And this is the real pain, and this is when I had a light bulb go off in my head. It's a revelation. I was ducked down behind a car, heart beating, sweating, running. It was being shot at, and we were pinned down and didn't have any guns between us. And I said to myself that day, I'm dead. Because all that person needed to do was
walk around that car
and unload on us. And luckily, in those times, we didn't have an unlimited amount of bullets, and we didn't have sophisticated weapons. A lot of them were stolen and fixed up however we could. We even had zip guns at a period of time.
Now, while all this was happening in your community, and the guys are pretty much fighting each other, when does that spill over, and then these organizations start having battles with black organizations?
I got to be honest, because of the distance between, there weren't a lot of battles with black organizations. There really wasn't a lot of it. The white guys were fighting with each other, and then the Hispanics moved in and started fighting with the Hispanics, and there was not a lot of friction with the black gangs. That's the truth.
And it sounds like you saw it the same way. These battles started happening in the prison.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it.
And again, over nothing. It's somebody recently, Michael Francisi. I saw a clip of his, and he hit the nail on the head. He said, 3 words you got to learn to survive in prison: thank you, please, excuse me. And he said there's a lot of guys in prison that didn't get the respect they think they deserve on the street, and they're going to kill people to prove who they are in prison. So you had a lot of that stuff, and again, it's culture. The white guys are doing whatever they're doing, the black guys are doing whatever they're doing. They don't understand each other, so you start having problems. It started in prison.
Then it went into drugs.
I was going to say, there wasn't any money involved really when we were young. There was no big drug empire for people to get into. That was limited. And so our fights were useless, senseless. Later it became drugs.
Right, and when drugs got involved, it got serious.
Because now there's money. And now you've got other interests. Big money, big money. When I was young, I was, rightfully so, I was kicked out of every public school I ever went to, and none of them would accept me back in. So I was sent to Mercy Mission, and that was Angel Garden Orphanage. I was made a ward of the state, And then I was sent to Montefiore on 14th and Ashland, and that was absolutely
Black
no good.
at that time.
Yep. And then I was sent to Oak Therapeutic that was on Kedzie and Foster. Then it later moved to Division near Ashland. And these were other gang hoods. And this is the funny thing. All my friends were black. We stood shoulder to shoulder fighting. Back then, it was common to fight. And in school, we didn't have weapons and people weren't as violent. Really, when you're a young man and you're in a gang, you really don't know what you're doing. It's a dead-end street.
It's going to crush you.
Two places, you're going to end up in prison or you're going to end up in the morgue.
Real simple.
Real simple.
Did you have a relationship with the Italian mob?
My mother's family first lived on Taylor Street. Taylor Street was all Italian and their world. Yeah, to say the least. Their world. And then they moved to a neighborhood called the Island on Roosevelt and Austin. And again, Rick, I didn't want to be anything but a gangster.
I get it.
The way that you dress, by the way, you dress really sharp.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody sees it, but these are quality clothes, and that is a dapper man. And I used to dress that way. So I wanted to be a gangster, and I would hear the stories about the Italian mob. And so long story short, yes, I worked with, when I was, I'm going to say 17 years old, I started, I had this relationship with this woman who, she was a lover of a mobster. And obviously all the Italian guys were married. They're married, but they got their tomato on the side, and she was his tomato. And she ran gambling dens where they took the phone calls. So she would use me because I was a clean-cut young guy, and I could go in and I would rent apartments under fictitious names, and then she would set up all, I would do the phones, I would do everything. I'd get the electric bill, I'd get the phones, and she would set up a whole table full of phones, and they had ladies taking bets. They had flash paper at that time. This was this paper, bang, lighted up, and the paper would there. So each woman had a lighter and a bucket next to her desk where she was taking phone calls. So everyone had a code. They would call in and place a bet on everything, boxing, football, basketball, all the sports, and whatever else. And so I would rent these apartments, and then I wasn't supposed to do it, but I used those apartments as stash spots for my drugs. So since I rented them and I had the lease, I had keys and access to all of them. The women worked there 9 to 5, and they would leave, and I had my little hiding spots, and I would hide my drugs in them. And I probably would have been killed if anything would have happened because of me. But luckily it didn't, and I didn't, as a young man, I didn't measure danger at all.
When was it your first prison experience?
Oh, that was as a juvenile. I was in the Audi home. Anybody that remembers, the Audi home was on Hamlin, Roosevelt, Ogden area. I was a regular. Every single cop in my district knew me, and I was the most likely suspect when anything happened. I got a beating at least twice a week. The worst beatings I've ever had in my life were at the hands of police. I never once made a complaint. I never went and filed something. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to up my game and make money and become somebody in life.
That they couldn't put their hands.
Because I didn't have a voice or a vote. But as I grew and I watched these older guys and their game, they couldn't be touched.
I grew up with them every day.
I can't even claim to have a bad life compared to these other people. You've got no shot at life. If there are no strong male figures in a boy's life, he's going to the street and we're getting used. The older guys are using us because they know we look up to them. Remind me who this guy was. He's my period of streets, the 80s. He always used to drive these high-line pimp cars. I remember a green stretch Cadillac.
Don Juan.
Bishop. He was everywhere.
Yeah.
I would see him everywhere. Is he still around?
He is. I used to manage his affairs for about 15 years.
The big gold cross and the fancy clothes.
Yeah.
and all of that. You
He's
know,
doing
I knew,
well.
He said, I make more money in a day than you make in a year.
Right.
And I wanted to be him. And
I get it.
used that many times in my life, and I even said it to cops, because when I became a real street legend and I was making money, oh, I use that line all the time. And I felt it, and it was exhilarating. It was an aphrodisiac. I was in and out of the county jail more times than I could count.
Right.
But the guys our age looked at me and they knew that he's from the street.
You reeked with it.
You walked it. Your gestures, the way you moved, your eyes, people just know that's a real MFer.
It's a different personality.
What I hated about federal prison are the counts. You know, you got to stand up so everybody can count you 3 times a day.
While you're doing this time, you meet some very interesting people quite naturally. Tell me about one of the most interesting people that you met.
I'm sitting in jail in Georgia, middle Georgia, and I had a lot of warrants, and I had a lot of, the feds were all over me. I had a Secret Service warrant because there was a period of my life where I was doing counterfeit money, and I was fairly good at it. And so the feds wanted to know if there was more of that money, because there was at one point $20 million, and they had got their hooks on $1 million of it, or whatever we had left from it. So when I was sitting in there, this new black dude comes in, and lo and behold, he happens to be placed with me in my cell. He happens to be from Chicago. He's from Chicago. He was fishing for me for info the whole time. And if you've ever done time and you're a real gangster, you don't even talk to people about their stuff. If they offer
certain things you don't ask.
You don't even ask. He just kept dropping these lines that came out of a cereal box. And then he said to me, yeah, what are you in here for? I kept telling people, I'm accused of this. I'm accused of this. And I said, yeah, I was accused of something to do with counterfeit money. I was in there, I got caught on the highway in Georgia. Didn't get caught, but I got stopped 5 years before that, and I ran and got away. And so I ran away to Mexico. They finally got me 5 years later and brought me back. And you know, I was on a drug case, so he had common ground with me. He said he had just recently been stopped on the highway bringing drugs to Chicago. But he said, but I'm going to be getting out soon. If you got any of that counterfeit money out there, me and you can make some money.
How do you know I got counterfeit money?
Well, because we had talked about the counterfeit money. It was just a setup. Well, you know, when he found out he wasn't getting anything, I wasn't giving him any counterfeit money. The next day, he's gone. I have an uncle, Joe Mandarino. Joseph Mandarino. His father was a legitimate Italian mob gangster. But his father was having none of that, sent his son to good universities, became a Chicago cop. Then he became Wooddale chief of police.
Wow.
And he was the chief of police in Lombard. He got in a fight with the mayor.
Wow.
Punched him in the face, got fired. And one day we were at a party, a family event, and I was looking for him and my other cousin. I couldn't find him. Opened the door to the garage, and they're out there, and I said, what are you guys planning? Because I could just feel it. And they were going to do some counterfeit stuff. And I had a lot of experience with counterfeit. And I'll tell anybody out there who ever thinks of playing with counterfeit, you're going to get caught. I was really good at it, Rick. I would spray my fingertips with that liquid scar stuff. Before I went out spreading it, I would get some fine girls. We'd go to other cities, other states. Because you have to spend it, get the product, later fence the product. And what I'd do is I'd go to homeless people and I'd throw some money out there. So they'd go out. Now the Secret Service has to go out and follow all of these leads. And there were no cameras back then. So they're planning this, and I say, hey, what's going on? And this was the peak of my life. This was peak of my street life. December 1986, I was running loads from Miami back and forth. I had a lot of Hispanic contacts, and we'll go into some of that stuff. And my uncle, he's got this stupid idea that my cousin's going to sell him some counterfeit at 30 points on the dollar, which is really high. And he's going to pay off all of his suppliers for his restaurant with this cash.
Dumb.
I said, it's all coming bottleneck right back to you and you're going to prison. And they looked at me and I said, Joe, how much money do you need to get flush and fix your life?
Right.
And he said, if I had 20 grand, I would be flush and I'd be able to get myself going. And I said, I'll loan you the money. I said, this is a loan. And
Right.
this is a loan out of my heart and out of family. You got to pay me back, because I was really, really militant with money.
Right.
You didn't pay me, I was coming for you. And anybody out there that I did this to, you deserved it. If I went after anybody and I was harsh and the punishment was brutal, because I didn't grow up with money, it wasn't easy to make, I'm risking my life every day, I'm coming for you. He goes to the coke business because he didn't spend the money correctly. He starts dealing coke. Not only did he get busted, they made a spectacle of him. You can find it online. Joe Mandarino, chief of police from Lombard, and he went away. They gave him 28 years, and he was cellmates with Joe Ganzi at Logan. He became very close with Joe, and in the cell next to them was Willie Lloyd. They were showering in the shower area at the same time, and he really tells it well. Willie Lloyd looked over and he goes, who would have thought? Those two chiefs in the same place at the same time taking a shower. Willie Lloyd is he's a good example. He was a street legend, and he was taken out by his own people. There is no loyalty in the underworld, especially Michael Franzese can tell this story better than anybody. His own father was involved in maybe the planning of his son's murder because you broke the rules, and it's just become a dog-eat-dog thing. Your own people will take you out.
Yeah, it's a whole nother game.
So there's a lot of betrayal.
You do that, then you get into this cigar thing.
I'm going to jump back to a good story. I was recently in Colombia. I went to Colombia to meet up with Colombian kingpin Carlos Lader. And when I was in Colombia, I was talking to this woman who's a presidential candidate right now, Sondra McCollins. She's running for president of Colombia, and she's the lawyer for Carlos Lader. Do you guys remember Carlos Lader? He was at Pablo Escobar's crew, and he got locked up. 5 years ago, he got released out of prison, federal prison. He did 30 or 35 years.
Wow.
His original sentence was 155 years. He testified against General Noriega from Panama, and they reduced it down to 30, 35. So she recommended to this journalist in Colombia, you got to interview Scott. And I want to make something clear. A lot of people say, who is he? I never heard of him. That's the way it's supposed to be. Because I was the real deal. And I'm only willing to speak about it now because when you are a real gangster, it's this. When I started making money and I said, I like this, I ruined it. Mm-hmm. So I was selling, I started getting out of the gangs in the late 70s, started robbing drug dealers.
Okay.
That was my first introduction into the larger drug world. So I started robbing drug dealers, and I had to sell it to turn it into cash.
Hello.
And that turned into the next business. So now I was selling, robbing. I supplied Fluky Stokes. I had a brother here on the South Side. I'm only going to say his first name, Charlie. Charlie was straight, smart business. Charlie had dope houses at that time. He would cook up. He would make the cookies. The women were preparing and selling, and I drove around with him a few times to his different crack houses he had running, what you would kind of call a corner. But back then they were a house. He had some sophisticated stuff going on. They had apartments connected to each other with little traps. So if the cops ever came, they think they're going into apartment 103, but the dope is actually stored in 507. They would use string system and ropes and gates and fences, and the cops couldn't even break those doors down. And Charlie was making big money. We used to supply Fluky, and we would bring the stuff and supply Fluky. I think people our generation knew who Fluky Stokes was and Willie the Wimp. Fluky and myself, we weren't that big. You know, Fluky used to buy 1 kilo at a time, take it to a hotel room, chop it up into smaller versions and split it up. You didn't have to be a 500 kilo dealer to be making money and rolling. 1987, the 18th of January, I was pulled over in Georgia by the Highway Patrol with a car loaded with Colombian cocaine. Pulled me over. I had a hidden compartment in the suitcases, and they'd searched that car 3 times and didn't find it. And then another patrol car came and they searched it again, they found it, and I took off and I got away. 3 days in the woods, came back to Chicago. I was officially on the run, and I got betrayed by more people than I can count. And I have a personal experience with, and I was officially on the run. I took off, I was a fugitive for 5 years. They caught me. I have the newspaper article, I sent it to you. It was 5 years and 1 day. They caught me on January 19th, 1992, took me back to Georgia. The Colombians, they sent me their own lawyer. And I figured out in a couple weeks that all they cared about is that I wasn't cooperating against them. They didn't care about me or my family. They just cared, they wanted that lawyer to know what I was doing, and I was offended. I got a lawyer, Mr. Thomas Garwood, that I will honor him for the rest of my life. He helped me, and he said, Scott, I think you're just a young man who didn't have direction. You had some disadvantages in life, and I am going to help you. I'm going to get you out of this, but I think you're never going to get in trouble again. I made a promise that day, no more, man. No more crime. And when I got out, I made a promise to myself that day that I wasn't going to disappoint any more people in my life, because I had disappointed many people up until that point.
Everybody.
And I disappointed myself too. I was kind of disappointed in where I had ended up, and where I was headed, I could see it. It was death or life in prison. So made that promise. I went and did my Fed stuff, and I got 8 years of Fed paper. It's a whole different world. These young guys,
totally,
they don't know. You know, people complain now, I got it hard. Woo-hoo. It was a lot harder before because there was a lot less of everything.
Whole nother game here.
Yeah. I got out, and now I owned my name. I could use my name again. No more fake papers, and I had fake IDs and everything. I'm now me, but I don't know how to do it. I mean, I had a work ethic, but I didn't have anything I didn't know how to do anything. I went back to Mexico and started rebuilding I had opened a small gym, a health club, and I started training fighters. I've rubbed shoulders more times than I can count with Julio Cesar Chavez. Marco Antonio Barrera is the godfather to one of my children. I've met more boxers than Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Deontay Wilder, the whole Mayweather family. I've been deep in the game, but it's worse than the streets. Don
it's
King.
Big money.
Louis Lamelli, who was a Chicago boxing figure. I remember I told him, and Louis, if you see this, God bless you, he said to me, I was so excited, this innocence. I said, I'm going to meet Don King. We're going to sit down. We're going to negotiate. He gave me a jar of Vaseline. He said, take this with you. You're going to need it. I'm struggling doing this. Back and forth to Mexico, bringing boxing gloves. I'm actually schlepping. I am trying to make an honest living.
Right.
But it's all around me. The offers are that not only here, but in Mexico, the people are saying, you want a ton? You want this? I'll hook you up. And the temptation is so strong. But I know the truth. I know where it's headed. And Thomas Garwood, my attorney, he's in my head. And I say, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I went to Cuba. I went to Havana, Cuba on a vacation. I had always wanted to go, and I bought 2 boxes of cigars off of these Cubans that came, who was a doctor, and his brother was a doctor and in the military in Cuba, and wanted me to bring a bag of goodies for him because they're starving. I brought it to them, so they offered me cigars, and out of pity. So I bought the cigars. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I left them in the hotel room, and my buddy who was with me said, "You're going to leave that?" I said, "Yeah, I don't. What am I going to do
They're
with
Cubans.
them?" And he said, "They're Cubans. You paid for them. Bring them." I gave one box to a friend of mine in Chicago, a lifelong childhood friend who I had started out in the business, and he was rolling, my buddy Brett. And so I would come in and stay at his house. He comes out of the room wearing a Versace robe, open chest, gold chain sticking out. And he looked at me and laughed because I had my 2 big suitcases of boxing gloves that I was selling. And he said, "You still dealing with that stuff?" I said, "Yeah, I make some money and pay some bills." And he said, "How much you make?" I said, "I pay my bills, make about $500. And he laughed. "I make that in a minute." He said, "You got any more of those cigars?" I said, "I got 1 box left. You smoked them already?" And he said, "No, I sold them." I said, "You sold them? How much?" He said, $25 a piece. Bang, bang, bang. I calculated. Light bulb went off, $625. And I said, "Hey, if I could get more of those, you think I could sell them here?" He said, "For sure." And I said, "Where would I sell them?" And he said, "Howard Frum." Howard Frum is the Rolex king of Chicago. And I had known Howard since the early 80s. And I said, "You think Howard would be okay with that?" And I had introduced him to Howard, so I had a deeper relationship. He said, "Howard likes you." Of course he would. I swear to you, I couldn't sleep until that trip was over. I went back to Mexico, got on the phone, started calling anybody and everybody, and I got a lead for a Cuban guy. He sold me 40 boxes of Cuban cigars for $110 a piece. I didn't know anything about them.
Right.
I got the pictures that day laid out on the desk. I didn't know the sizes, the shapes. I went to Chicago. I sold them all and turned it into 12 grand at Howard Frum Jewelers. He helped me do it. He called everybody he knew.
We got Cubans.
Got Cubans. I got a guy here with Cubans. I went back. I bought his remaining 120 boxes. I came back, but the journey, Rick, was anything but easy. Some people said to me, because I wrote a book about it, and I started writing the book back then, but then the old gangster kicked in. Ooh, I don't want any law looking at me. I don't know the statutes of limitations. I don't want to know. And I gave it up at 25 pages because I was now interested in rebuilding my life. And so I gave it up. And I went back and forth, and eventually he ran out of cigars, and he said to me, "Scott, I never had a customer like this. What are you doing? And and I don't have any more." And I got a guy who knew a guy, got on a plane, and I made over 50 trips. It's actually over 60 trips to Cuba, packing up my cigars. And there's 2 versions of Cuban cigars. There's original factory store-bought cigars, and then there's what's commonly known as street cigars. And those are stolen. Any way they can get them, they put them together. And it's a dangerous, slippery slope because, you know, anybody who's hungry and trying to make a buck, they'll sell you out and throw you under a bus. They're only concerned about the $2 they're going to make and not the quality. What ended up happening is I got called out on it a handful of times by people. "Hey, are these street cigars? This is wrong, that's wrong." I didn't know the difference, but I educated myself. I started reading, bought books. There was no computers back then to do research. And I took the tours at the Cuban factories. I had to up my game because the level of clientele that I was dealing with, it was an honor. I never sold a cigar ever that wasn't legitimately from Cuba, but the quality of the street cigars can be questioned, and sometimes it's bad. And I was called out. And I said, that's it. Goal number 1, because there's an embargo against Cuba, people started getting arrested and going to prison. There's a lawyer here in Chicago. His name was Richard Mickey Connors. He wrote a book. Think about this. He wrote a book while he was smuggling cigars in the same period I was, mid-90s, and he got arrested. He got disbarred. They took away his license to sell, to be a lawyer. He went to prison for 3 years. They confiscated his house. My goal was to sell to Michael Jordan. Who can spend money on cigars, especially Cubans, guys who are players? And these are the top of the top businessmen, stockbrokers. Most of them were business owners. And lo and behold, I met Sean Gale. Sean Gale, Chicago
Football
Bear.
player.
And I want to give a shout out to Sean, class act. I said, no more street cigars. And I started buying from the factory. Now the price went up. My original street cigars were $20 a box, like an average price. And I would sell them here, $300, $400, $500, $600 a box. And then the factory cigars, those are starting at $100 and ending up at $300, $400. So my prices increased, profit decreased, but my problems almost went away. Because now, with a straight face and with honor, I can say, here's what I got. No more problems with the authenticity. Sean introduced me to Richard Dent, who was still playing football. Richard was playing for the Indiana Colts then. Richard adopted me like family. His wife, Leslie, and him, we used to sit around in his beautiful mansion and talk and smoke cigars. And Richard is another gentleman. That's a class act. Sean, I told him I want to meet Michael. He's like, Scott, Michael's a superstar, and that is a hard thing. And Michael doesn't let people into his life very easily. And I remember Richard preparing me for Michael. Got to give you the rundown. He's like, Scott, don't invade Michael's private space. You don't ask him for an autograph and don't ask him for any of that stuff. We'll do that on the side. But so I went to Michael's house. I would go to Michael's house and I would sell him the top of the top cigars. So I had the luxury and the experience to coexist with Michael Jordan. That was pretty cool.
I want to know about the first time you put these cigars in front of Michael Jordan.
I showed up at Michael's gate out in the suburbs, number 23 on the gate. And now Michael had, that wasn't the first time he received my cigars, but it's the first time I met him. I showed up at Michael's house with my wife and my then 5-year-old daughter. Michael's no nonsense, and he wanted the best. So I started. It wasn't like there was a reaction to Michael when he got them, because I brought in my 4 bags and Michael's like, I want that, I want that, I want that. And then it was like, can you get this? I said, I'll work on it, Michael. And this was one thing. What can you get that's special that nobody else can get? And I said, I got it for you, Michael. I had a roller her name was Andrea, and she had been Fidel's personal roller. So they were like a movie, Fidel's personal rollers at the El Laguido factory. That's where they made the Cohibas, and it was in a beautiful fraction of Cuba where Fidel had one of his private residences very close to there. So she was locked in a room. They were searched before they went into the room and searched before they came out to make sure nobody's poisoning Fidel, because the CIA had a plan to poison him through his cigars. So armed guards preparing this, and now she was a civilian again and working at a renowned factory store, and she could hand roll cigars that nobody else could get. So do you know what the Bellicoso is, the torpedo? Those pointy ones. So you have the Monte Cristo number 2, Diplomatico, there's torpedoes. Well, she could make those in the double Corona size.
Wow.
But they didn't have a mold. They had to make them with a she was a skilled craftsman. So she made the mold formed them out of newspaper, and it took a long time. And then they had one that's called, they think they call it like a Salamao. It has this funny shape, and same thing, extra large, and I had those made for Michael, but it backfired on me. I had to wait for her to hand make those. They were really, really expensive. They cost me in Cuba $300 for what's called a maso, and it's a bundle. And handmade, hand-rolled, premium, hand-picked tobacco made for Michael. I sell a bunch of these to Michael, and then some guy, we're surrounded by know-it-alls that know nothing. He tells Michael, those are fakes. And Michael said, fakes? So I get a phone call from Michael. And, I get the phone call from Richard. And Richard's like, you got to calm Michael down right now, Scott. So I call Michael, and he's like, these are fake, Scott, and what's up with all? And I said, Michael, please hear me out. I get these, you wanted special, what no one can get. He said, this guy pulls out a book and he shows Michael, look, they're not in the book. Well, the book is for me and you. These are for presidents and dignitaries. This
Right.
woman makes these handmade. And I said to Michael, I would never, ever pull anything like that on you. It is an honor that you befriended me and trust me. Michael, I swear to you. And then and he calmed down, and I went back to Cuba, and I had that woman. I have the video. I found it the other day, and my editing team, because she says, Michael Jordan, these are made for you. And
The best tobacco in the world. A ver, ¿nos explicas de esos tabacos? Hello?
look, I come from nothing. I worked hard. I wanted to learn how to speak and how to carry myself and how to act to become a human and, quote, a somebody. I was hurt that day. It was a hard pill to swallow. I'm still being scrutinized, and I'm doing my best. There was a time that I brought street cigars, but they were still Cuban. And I met this Cuban man, a character. He's still alive, Don Arturo Brigante. He looked like a Cuban man out of a movie. A little chubby, wife-beater t-shirt, gray white hair, slick back, gold chains, smoking always with a Cuban cigar in his mouth. And his cooler next to where he sat, his son was my first supplier, so we became good friends. He had a cooler, a styrofoam cooler, and he used like some metal wire, made a grate, homemade, everything homemade, the bottom filled with water, and he laid his Cuban cigars in there as a humidor. No need to waste money on all this fancy stuff. He knew better than any of us about Cuban cigars.
Right.
And so I asked him, hey, Don Arturo, what's your preferred cigar? And he said, Cuban. And I said, yeah, I know, but which one? He said,
Right.
Cuban. I said, any special size you like? He said, whatever my son gives me, it's a Cuban cigar. I said, what brand?
Cuban.
He looked at me and said, Cuban. And then he educated me, and a lot of people don't want to hear this and they don't like it. A Cuban cigar is a Cuban cigar, period. There is no difference between any brand. That is folklore and a blatant lie. It is marketing. The Cuban tobacco is rolled in Cuba, and I will tell anybody, I am an expert. You can quiz me, and I am an expert. If anybody was, any so-called connoisseur was given two cigars, and you said, this is, you tell me which one is factory and which one is street, you couldn't pick it. If they told you, you tell me which one is one brand and which one is another, you couldn't pick it without the label. The labels are marketing. And would you like me to educate your clientele a little bit on cigars?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cigars were originally, an indigenous thing in Cuba. They used to send them, the European explorers used to come to Cuba. They would bring them back to their country, Spain, England, Portugal, wrapped in pigskins to keep them humid, moist, and to keep the water and the salt from damaging on the trips. The pigskins worked really well. And then when they got to their country, these were only given to high society.
Right.
The guys rowing the boats didn't get a cigar.
Right.
And fine Cuban cigars were probably given first to the king. And what happened is, they wore white gloves back then. Gentlemen wore white gloves. They would get stained from the cigars. So they originally started putting a white band on it. And then someone came up with this marketing idea. Well, since I'm going to give them to the king or the queen, their label, the King of Spain, the Queen of Spain, and then it became my label. And then later on, it became the factories putting just their label. And then it turned into what we now know. You and I spoke about it earlier. Nothing is real or true. Exactly. So they put all these brands in Partagas factory in Havana. They make like 40 different brands. So you're going to tell me that they keep track? This roller only makes this brand. They mix them all into a big basket and they put any brand on.
But that was pretty brilliant for him to put the King's label on it.
But the cigars became my next opportunity. And it was a gray line because I was on federal paper. Cigars are prohibited. They are illegal. You don't mess with the government. You're never going to win. You can't beat them, join them. And the truth is, hey, if something is a law and it's illegal and you get caught, well, you deserved it. You had your opportunity not to do it.
You're going to get spanked.
And so I saw the writing on the wall, this is coming. I was very careful. I ran this like I ran the Coke business. And I had one goal in mind. It was my next chance to get from A to S without going through the whole alphabet. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I didn't spend the money on anything but my future. I built my gym, built my life. And when I saw that was coming, it was drawing closer. There were investigations. And unfortunately for some of the people, I used to organize trips and I'd have a bunch of people carrying suitcases for me. They were ending up in jail in Cuba.
Wow.
So I had people I was insulated, but then I had a couple customs guys that I paid to get them out. They told me, Scott, you're on the radar, you got to stay out. So I went to court in Cuba and I was exiled for a year. And then I started doing strictly factory cigars. And it kept me out of harm's way in Cuba, but I had to get through the Mexican system to the border and deal with the cartels to get them to the other side. It was a lot of stress. It was a lot of hard work, but the coin was there.
Let me. You say you stuck to factory cigars. Were they illegal?
The factory cigars were not illegal, but they were almost impossible to get.
Really?
You couldn't because it was limited supply. There was a huge demand throughout the world, and they've got to appease their sponsors. So they're real legitimate big customers. Spain, England, Canada, the official Habanos stores in these countries, they put in an order and they got to fill it. So,
but they're legal.
But they're legal. They're legal in Cuba.
Right.
Oh, in the U.S., it's all ATF. You're going to prison.
There
is an embargo and there's taxes.
And
alcohol,
it's still there.
Tobacco, and firearms. It's still there today.
Yeah.
They get confiscated and you can go to prison. And the amount I was bringing, I sent you the newspaper article when I got one of my loads confiscated in Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Mexico, almost 5,000 cigars. That was a $100,000 hit I took. I was beating my head against the wall. I wanted to throw in the towel many times because it was a brutal process. And the drug dealers go through the same process.
Right.
Their shipments are going down all the time, but the volume makes up for it. So I got them taken away at the border, from the U.S. border. It came out on the front page in Nogales and the front page in Nogales, Mexico. And it was very hard, but I was resilient and I was a man on the mission because to me, I wasn't disappointing my attorney, Thomas Garwood. It was cigars. Come on, it's a gray line. Me, I was on 8 years federal paper. I would have gone right back in, and I would have had to do that 8 years. And these other guys, the lawyer got 3. There's a group out of California. They got 10 years. 10 years.
Oh, yeah, it's not a joke. I'm going to send this out to Richard Dent. Hey, man, we worked out a lot at the same gym. I asked you several times, hey, bruh, come do my show for me. You said, I'll think about it. I'm saying to you right now, we're here, next level. It's time, bruh. Come do the show. And if Mike wants to do the show, we're here for you. Here's what we do in closing. I really had a lot more questions for you, but, for time's sake. Here on this show, we have the OG. We define it here. It's the original gentleman.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, most people say or think that this is the original gangsters. No, this is bigger than original gangster. And that's what this is, the original gentleman. How do you see and define the OG?
The person who survived and is still there.
Thank you.
That's probably the first and simplest answer to that question, because anybody who lived through all of the difficulties we did, I started at 0 and had to struggle through life. I'm fortunate, and any OG, Larry Hoover is lucky, he's still alive. because the alternative is where Willie is, and Jeff Fort is still alive, and any of the guys who originated and went through all that stuff, because the game is almost over, we're getting close to that line, live it with dignity, go out there and enjoy it, and there's no one answer to that question. I know some guys that are OGs, but they didn't do anything with their life except they're alive. Nothing else. I don't know if you can classify them as OGs. I think OGs, you have to have not only made it and you're alive, but done something to give back.
You have to give it back. You have to take what you've done with your life and give it back. We do not exclude women. No gentleman is going to be successful without a lady.
Oh, there's some ladies out there who deserve it.
I want to give a shout out to my man Gucci. They're finna do the Steppers Convention here in Chicago. I want the future to tell Gucci's story. Shout out to the Chief Apostle William McCoy. Love you, sir. All right, so, in closing, man, this is the original OGs cap. If you don't have one, you're missing something. But I'm going to get this to my man. You know what I'm saying? It's official. Yes, sir. There it is.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody, and you hit that subscribe button. You got to follow his show, and I want to thank him for inviting me. Thank you to all the crew, everybody here that organizes this and makes it possible. Thank you, and I am very honored that I was invited.
That's it. That's all.
Just so you know, I flew in from Mexico. I flew in from Mexico to do this show. Here's my bodyguard. She makes all my travel possible.
She flew in with him, and she's been on security ever since she's been here. It's a beautiful thing. Hey, it's a beautiful thing to see you be able to love your daughter the way you love her.
Oh yeah, I take care of my kids because I didn't get it, so I gotta give it back. And
I get it.
they get eight kids, 3 different mothers, but I've been in all of their lives.
It's all good, brother.
Thank you, bro.
My man.
Yep, it was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Cuando dice reset, ¿le apachurro?
No, eso es cuando está
Filmando. ¿Y cuando se quita es que no está filmando?
Cuando pachurras, dice stand by, ya no está grabando.
Ah, ok.
Pachúralo.
¿Qué es apachurro?
Pachúralo. The separating room separates the tobacco here. Separation of the tobacco. Working. Separating leaf by leaf. You have your filler, your binder, your wrapper. Separating.
Ahí principalmente no, si hay una mayor cantidad, la devuelve.
This is the school. This is where your students learn. 9 months of training to be classified rollers. They only make the small cigars, and they're paid nothing. There you go. Wrapping, rolling, stretching. Eso es un tabaco. That's a cigar. Look at that.
Ah, ¿es el que le dieron ahorita?
Smoking cigars. There you have your 4 different leaves. Your filler, your binder, your taste, your smell, all. Monte Cristo number 2 torpedoes. Sit.
¿El Sancho Panza de cuál es? Sancho.
Three people in the whole factory make this. 3 personas nomás los fabrican aquí.
¿Ese es el doble corona? Ponlo para la cámara.
¿Cómo está? This is quality control. After they're checked, cut, put in the boxes, marked, wrapped, banded, and all cigars. Bigger cigars. Monte Cristo A's. Havana. Here's where every tobacco is set to dry for 15 days after it's rolling in production. They open, show me.
No, pero yo no veo.
This is a pre-caster box
Don Joaquín.
of cigars.
Parte acá con
Pre-Castro.
Cifuentes, con no sé quién, con quién era. Y entonces se funden la fábrica como tal. Bien, no, eso es difícil. Es un pedido que hace un comprador. Exacto.
No se nota muy bien en el filmado. There are your boxes. Boulevard. Part of this. Romeo and Juliet.
¿Y qué me dicen de qué me dicen?
Boulevard Petito. This is how your boxes are tied. Color code. This is what they color code. Color, color, color. It's hard to notice on tape the different colors, but you should be able to see. Color code. There you are. You count the boxes. Tell me how many there are. ¿Filmamos a la gente que no están haciendo nada?
Está en horario de almuerzo.
Porque luego me dijo Ernesto, tráeme el There you go. That's how sometimes boxes are made, and they miss the wrappers. It's all handmade. Human hands apart from that. Nobody's perfect. Especially when you're paid very little money. Look at the masses and masses of cigars. Antique rings of every kind. boxes. Ready to go. Gracias. ¿Cómo está?
¿Y eso que no viniste en la... que no trajiste?
Tabaco,
Sí.
porque no hay que traer.
Ay, porque ¿dónde está la camioneta? ¿Sabes cómo se demoran?
No tiene petróleo.
Ah.
Es muy rico.
¿De que no tiene petróleo?
Your services. Whatever you would like. Thank you very much.
Que ele autorize e a Cubal se encarrega de fazer o trânsito.
Ya Cubacho se encarga.
Mira, tiene que estar ahí, señora, el día 20, por favor. No vai poder no Congresso trabajando.
You see that? Robusto. Cohiba. These special Cohiba jars. The special hiding place. Some of the best cigars on the island are made. Here I go down to the bottom shelf. Take out the special bundle. These are Salomons, only made for foreign dignitaries. Hardest cigar to find on the planet.